Bub Nation, what is going on, everybody? It is the first week of spring football. We finally got some stuff to talk about that isn't NFL draft related, something like that. You know, like what's going on with our players, whatnot. No, we got real practice to talk about. We got real press conferences to go over, and some interesting takeaways for the week. I'm excited that we're back to football season. Russ, how are you doing, man? How you been? Thank you for joining me. It's been too long since we had a Buff Blitz.
Yeah, no, I'm doing great. Like you said, I'm excited we finally have some football stuff going on. We have some things we can look at, we can watch. And I gotta say, I'm super excited with what we're gonna see this spring. I love Coach Prime's motto for the spring and for this upcoming season, which is, last year we had great players. This year we have a great team. Yeah. And so I'm really excited to see this team come together, put it together. And I think what we're going to talk about today when it comes to the coaches talking, the players talking, everything that we're seeing already, it's going to be a very, very different team going into next year. Just like you and I have said for months on end when it came to what this team is going to look like post Shedeur, post Travis. I think we're getting all of the right messages when it comes to that.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Like it feels so different. I know that there's been some people in the comments, and I guess before I finish this, y'all smash that like, subscribe to Buffs News Weekly. It's in the description of my video, and join the chat on like what your takeaways have been so far. But I've seen some comments have been like, man, the team, I'm just not like as excited about the team this year. Well, Shedeur and Travis Hunter aren't on the team this year. That's understandable, but I'm really excited because I think this team's going to have an attitude shift in a really positive direction. We'll get to Marshall Faulk. That's why I included him on my thumbnail because I think he has a big deal to do with that, or plays a big deal in that. But I can't wait to see who emerges as those leaders, as those star players in this new era of Buffs football.
Yeah, and like I said, I mean, if you're not excited for this, I think you got to really take a look at the players that we have and what should excite you about that. Because, the quarterback situation, we're honestly in a better spot right now. As bad as crazy as that sounds, Julian Lewis and Kaidon Salter, this quarterback room is better than it was last year and the year before that. We have two unbelievable quarterbacks in that room. And I mean, just watching the little bit that we did in that first spring practice and watching them hurl the ball around, I'm like, oh my gosh, like this is exciting. This is going to be good. You look at all the young wide receivers, who we have on this roster. Omarion Miller eventually coming back from his injury. Yep. So excited to see that. The running back room, to see what happens with them now with new direction and new kind of maybe, I guess motivation, so to speak. Having Coach Faulk as your coach has to like kind of get your juices flowing a little bit. And then just seeing the new leaders step up. This is Jordan Seaton's team now. Like, let's be honest. This is Jordan Seaton's team. It will be his team for the next 2 to 3 years. And I'm excited for that too. There's so many different things to be excited about. Dave, what do you think you're most excited about right now as we head into spring and what you're looking to see come out of it?
Okay, well, there's two things. Biggest takeaway, that I am paying attention to right now, since we've started spring ball, we've made it now through 2 practices. No one's announcing cringy merch lines. That is a theme for me going into this season. Let's continue to be all about the business. I think but the business on the field, it really, the only guy that should be selling merch right now is Jordan Seaton. That's kind of how I feel about it. Now I know our popular quarterbacks will, but man, you got to earn it. You got to earn it. And I think we had, it wasn't the majority of the team, but maybe a couple guys were focused a little bit more with how they could pivot this for some quick gains rather than being a little bit better. And they end up at their spot they came from. So, anyways, I don't want to go dark side Dave on this. In all seriousness, though. I love the attitude shift that Marshall Faulk spoke about today. And I would love to get your thoughts first, Russ, on his press conference. I mean, one, it was like long, it was like almost 20 minutes. It was incredible just to hear about his journey to coaching, how Coach Prime, what was the word? Coach Prime is a groomer.
Yeah, he groomed him. He was grooming him for coaching the whole way.
I ain't going to do Coach Prime like that. I'm sorry, Coach Prime. You're not a groomer. You're not a groomer, Coach Prime. But Coach Prime's been grooming him for this for a few years now, and it was great to see. But I had a handful of takeaways, but I want to hear Russ, man. What did you think about that press conference?
Man, it's interesting hearing him speak, and just all the different things he brings. Very similar to Coach Prime, I feel. Their personalities are very similar to each other, and that's just refreshing to see. And again, I can only imagine what's going on in that running back room. I mean, the little bit of clips that we've seen already from him coaching, having the guys literally just adjust their elbow by a couple inches, like those are things. Like, can we just talk about the fact that people keep saying over the last year that players cannot become coaches? Like, that is the most idiotic take I have ever heard in my life. Like, I keep saying this. There's one difference between a head coach, an OC, a DC versus a position coach. If you are putting one of the greatest players at their position to coach that position, you're going to tell me that they're not going to succeed? Like, that's ridiculous. They know all the tiny little details. They know what it takes to be successful. And he is showing that already in just a couple days, calling the guys out saying, hey, what's going to happen if you fumble the ball? What's going to happen if you false start? I want you to determine that because, that's something that you need to hold yourself responsible for. Adjusting your elbow and your arm placement on the ball. Those are things that these kids would never have thought of. And I guarantee that their high school coaches and whoever brought them up never taught them any of that stuff because they weren't Hall of Fame players at that position. So to just hear those little things and the little fundamentals and all of that stuff, massive, huge. I think the other biggest takeaway that I think you and I could have in regards to all of the press conference, we go back to the first press conferences with Livingston and Shermer.
Yeah.
We are running the ball. We are going to run the ball. And what we have said all year long, Dave, what did we say? Why did we not run the ball? Was it Pat Shermer's fault? Was it Pat Shermer saying we're just going to throw it 90% of the time?
No. It was Shador's fault, right? Is that it?
It was his decision. It was his decision. But what I love is every coach said the same thing this week, didn't they?
Yeah.
They said, when you've got Shador Sanders and Travis Hunter on your darn field, are you going to run the ball? No, you're going to put it in the hands of your best players who are by and far not only the best players in the team, but the best players in college football. Yes. Like, that was obvious. And to anybody who thought that that was going to be a problem, I've got some beachside resort, houses to sell you here in Colorado because it's just absolutely insane that you think that that was normal in the situation that was going to happen again this year. I mean, did you notice that from all of the press conferences this week?
Yeah, it was great, man. It was great to just hear the alignment with coaching staff, with the entire coaching staff on running the ball. And I mean, man, like that's why I had to throw on the Ralphie horns because I'm pumped about this because again, the biggest adjustment I think with this year is having somebody like Marshall Faulk at the running back coach position because again, he's going to demand his guys get touches and they're going to be ready. They're going to be ready to get touches. And he spoke, he's like, hey, we didn't run the ball well this past year at all. And he was like, I understand, man. If you guys think that we're going to suck at it this year, like, I understand. Like, we don't have the data really to point towards being great at that this year. But it seems like he is fully committed to getting this running game not only at a decent spot, but for it to be kind of the primary driver of this offense. I mean, imagine if we have like an above average running game in the conference, man, how much easier that's going to make life on whoever's playing quarterback and our wide receivers, man. Like I absolutely love it. And to hear Gunnar White echo the same thing as well. I love that. Any last thoughts on Marshall Faulk? If not, I would love to hear your first impressions of Gunnar White. This was the first time I remember, ever seeing him speak.
Yeah, no, I'd love to jump on Gunnar White. Absolutely loved hearing him speak. The more we find out about him, I think the more that people can kind of understand why he got promoted. A big one that we're finding out more and more about is really he's kind of the big reason that Chauncey Gooden is at Colorado. Like Gunnar White was his first recruiter way back when at Jackson State. Like they had a connection from back then. So to all those people that were like Gunnar White, who you guys got to forget, you got to remember that a lot of these analysts and things like that, they're kind of the ones that start the recruiting process years before a player comes to a school. And so he obviously has some kind of connection with them. It sounded like when he got promoted, all of the players were just like ecstatic about that. So that's, unbelievable to hear. And in all honesty, it's a low risk, high reward scenario because you've also got George Hegaman. You've also got now Andre Girard on staff. And so it's not like they're just saying, hey, Gunnar White, you've never done this before. Go do it by yourself. And you now need to take on the hardest job probably at Colorado. No, he's doing it with multiple people who have that, higher experience, who have, different things that they can bring to the position coaching. And so I absolutely love what I had to hear from him. Like I said, just the continuation of them explaining. And it's almost bad because I don't want to say they're throwing the team under the bus last year, but it's just interesting because they all say the same thing. It's they all like, well, we RPO'd a lot and, we decided to pass it out of the RPO. Not saying that was wrong because, again, you had an unbelievable quarterback, so it's the right call to make. Like,
yeah.
They throw that in there at the end of like, why? Well, people will be like, well, that's dumb. You shouldn't throw the ball 90% of the time. Well, it worked a bunch of the times. Like I saw somebody comment that, if the pass game is not working, do you just continue doing it? Do you adjust because you have the best players? Dave, how many games in the last 2 years would we say that the pass game was not working whatsoever? Like a handful?
Here's the thing with those answers, man. They are, it's a very political way to just talk about again, don't take those comments at face value. You got to read between the lines.
Exactly.
I think that and I don't want to rehash everything from last year, but I think there was some frustration. I mean, you saw in Pat Shermer on some of those videos in the meeting room about yelling at Shedeur to run the ball, like those sorts of things, or like to hand the ball off. Like, he was adamant about it. I think that, sometimes there were some differences with Shedeur having as much autonomy as he has had, but we don't have a talent like Shedeur at quarterback this year. I think that's what they're trying to say. And so also like we're going to simplify what we're going to be giving the quarterback. And I think things are going to function, I think, a little bit more so how some people have hoped for. But again, like these are coaches talking, giving explanations. Don't take everything they say totally at face value. I think that they don't want to put anything negative out about Shedeur right now, which makes sense. But I mean, we saw some instances of this throughout the season. There were some questionable audibles, play calls, things like that. You wonder if they had something to do with it. But at the end of the day, man, like, yeah, we could have given this running game more of a chance. Sure. But it's hard to argue against going to your best two players most of the time,
And Keith has a good question here with so no screen or draw plays to a running back. What did we already see in the first day of spring practice, Dave? What was the one like big clip that they showed when we had all 11 on the field? We got to see a screenplay.
Yeah, that was real nice.
By Kaidon Salter. And I was like, my head exploded because I was like, when was the last time you saw an old school classic screenplay with Colorado under Coach Prime? We didn't. We really didn't. Like it was always like, either, I guess when we had, Dylan Edwards, you kind of had those wide receiver or running back screens, but they weren't even the same kind of like it's been a while. So absolutely, we are seeing a change already at practice with
Marshall
Kaidon
Faulk's
Salter.
going to want those screenplays. He's going to want those things to his backs. No doubt about it.
Well, what's the one way, Dave, to get the pressure off of the quarterback? Throw some screens in there like that. Not tunnel screens, not wide receiver screens. No. Let's dare you to pin your ears back and rush at the quarterback. And then let's just pop it right over your head and we're gone going the other direction for, 20, 30, 40 yards. Those are all things that we needed last year. And I don't know, again, I agree. I think Shedeur had too much autonomy in the offense. I think, again, and it's nothing against his skill. I think he needed somebody, though, to say, like, hey, we're not going to do this. It's not in your hands that much. Guess what's going to happen, though? Shadeur's going to the NFL where he's not going to get that autonomy, and I think he's going to do just fine. It's not a detriment to who he is as a player. It's unfortunately a detriment to just some of our decision-making overall. And I will say this to kind of, conclude that idea is I'm going to give Pat Shurmur the benefit of the doubt for one more season, okay? If we come out next year and we start seeing some of the same patterns where we're throwing the ball 90% of the time, when we start that season next year, trust me, I will be one of the first people on the fire Pat Shurmur bandwagon. Day one, okay? If against Georgia Tech, we are throwing the ball 90% of the time with this team, I will start the Fire Pat Shurmur fan club at that point, Dave, and you are more than welcome to join me.
Hey, you know I always got my list of assistants on the hot seat. So, hey, we'll see how it goes. But I wanted to get back to Gunnar White a little bit because, of course, we let in with the fact that, again, the first thing he was talking about is just relying on the run. But Adam Munster-Tiger and Brian Howell did a podcast today. I don't know if you had the chance to check it out, but I thought it was an interesting nugget. Again, Brian Howell, Adam Munster-Tiger spent a ton of time around the team, and is a huge insight for somebody that only, follows the team through the internet, right? So it was interesting that Adam Munster-Tiger said that he had less, I'm paraphrasing, but less reservations about this Gunnar White hire than he did Phil Oldholt at this point last year. Thought that was really, really insightful because, of course, he's been around Gunnar White now for 2 seasons. He also alluded to the fact that, of course, having George Helow, Andre Girard part of the staff now is also crucial. But I think you saw it today, like in his press conference, man. Like I think he was ready for that moment. I thought that he handled himself very, very well, confidently, and that was a test that I thought he passed. Sometimes, man, like the first press conference, of course, like Philly's head coach didn't have the best press conference Sirianni did or whatever, right? But, you try and get a read on, hey, are these guys like ready for this type of moment? I thought he passed the test. And again, hearing that from Adam Munster-Tiger, I'm not taking that lightly.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. And Dave, to go back and look at, the Phil Loadholt time and kind of what's going on there and why I could probably see why Adam is saying that. I think part of the problem is the bar was so low with the coach before Loadholt that, again, and I know you were excited to have Loadholt here and just and just having him set expectations with those guys, which they didn't have the year prior, which is embarrassing if I'm being honest. But I think the part of the problem was, and I thought about this more as, Loadholt left and as they were looking for the offensive line coach, I thought about it more and more and looking behind the stats and the numbers and what was happening. While we improved, I don't think we improved enough. And so my big thing was Phil Loadholt that good of a coach, or were our expectations so low from the previous that, we kind of elevated Loadholt to be like this almost guru of a offensive line coach. And so when he left, I don't think it was that big of a loss for the team. And I think we are in a better position because of having the 3-headed monster that is our offensive line coaching room now, compared to just having Phil Loadholt with Gunnar White helping him out, with George Hegeman kind of in the background. I think a combination of Gunnar White, George Hegeman, and Andre Girard are a much better offensive line room to be able to work with those kids, to be able to work on different tactics, different techniques, to have more people to go out and recruit. I just think overall we did upgrade when it comes down to it. And again, I'm not trying to say that Lodeholt is that bad. I'm just saying the loss of him is not as bad as I think people wanted to make it out to be when that occurred at the moment. We, of course, had those initial emotions. Like, again, I know you were a Lodeholt guy for a while.
I still like Phil Lodeholt.
What were your thoughts on that? Like, are you, do you think we improved that role and that position with where we went?
Well, I like the fact we got 3 coaches, and there's going to be a serious issue if we got 3 coaches and we can't get good offensive line play this year. Like, that's just going to be like, I feel like things are set up for success in terms of the athletes that we got on the line. Now, it's not perfect. I think that we can still upgrade in some ways in the spring portal, but I think we're in a good position. Again, we got 3 coaches, all with kind of different backgrounds. Years of experience with Prime or the team, I think is really great. Both of the assistants played in the NFL. But I thought Phil, all my guys know their assignments. Lodeholt did a good job, but we still saw Tyler Brown at right tackle come the bowl game. And that was just inexcusable. So to transition into like one of my biggest takeaways that I saw, in some of the practice footage that I talked about yesterday on the video that I posted. One, I think it's, passing grade. Tyler Brown not playing right tackle. That's awesome. He has way too short of arms and does not have the lateral speed. He's slower than Khalil Benson out there playing right tackle. Should never happen. So the fact that he wasn't out there playing tackle was great. And I know we only saw a couple clips, but nice to see Taimani out there. And I think Gunnar White spoke about him as well, just being a guy. He has 2 kids. He's in a little bit different of a life stage than a lot of, his other teammates. And honestly, with eligibility ending soon, either this year or next year, he's got a lot on the line, man. Like he's got to find another gear, another level, man, if he's going to make it to this next, the NFL or UFL too, even just making some money playing professional football. And I thought it was interesting that he was out there at right tackle with the ones.
Yeah. The offensive line as it was built for day one, I like it. But I also don't think that's going to be who's going to be starting day one come the fall. Mm-hmm. Unless, again, right now, like you said, Taimani, he is going to have an opportunity that he needs to take a hold of and not let go. This is his spring to really show what he's made of. He's in a great position because Houston is out with the injury. Who many probably penciled in as the right tackle to start spring. Yep. So we were a little surprised to see Taimani at the starting right tackle spot, but we also know that's probably the number 1 position that they should be going after in the spring portal when that hits. Yes. So there's going to be more competition coming there. And so he cannot look behind him as he goes through this. He needs to push forward. But my big thing too, is I love what we've got through the rest of the line, left guard being Kareem Harden. I love that move. Right guard, of course, Zy Chrysler. I went and looked up how to pronounce his name because somebody gave me crap on that. Chrysler.
I think I was always saying Chrysler. So,
he thought that too. So I actually got to clap back at them and be like, well, I was wrong and you were wrong, because I looked up on Illinois' site. They have the pronunciation. It's CRISS-LER. So Zy Chrysler as the other guard. I like that. We'll see what happens at center if Cash is able to hold on to that. I think part of that right now, Dave, the reason why he's starting is because, and I've said this, if you're an incumbent player, you should have a leg up on a transfer. Totally. Because you know the system, especially at center. You're already comfortable at snapping the ball, knowing the snap counts, knowing the different, schemes. So it makes sense that Cash is starting to start the spring. Now, Cash needs to keep up and make sure he's playing perfectly, because Zarian McGill is going to be chasing him all spring as he gets more up to speed with the scheme and all that. So I absolutely love that. I think, Taimani, he's, the best we've got right now at right tackle. But again, we need more there. I don't think that's going to be the end of that. So overall, I like what I'm seeing. I like where people are put. I feel like people are actually in the right positions. Like you said, we're not playing out of position and trying to find, I guess lightning in a bottle by throwing some guard at tackle and a tackle at guard, which again, whose call that was last year, I have no idea. I'd really like to know because it did not seem like it was the smart move, and the constant shifting didn't help either. So I want to see consistency there this spring. I'm excited for that. And I'm really excited to see what Gunnar White brings to the
Yeah. And man, I forgot who posted this photo in Guru's Discord, but Cardi Smith gets some snaps at left tackle as well. I think right now that's another position to monitor, which is not only our backup left tackle, but honestly like the swing tackle position, because Phillip Houston was that swing guy for us until he got inserted into the starting lineup. And with him still recovering from his injury, that position is totally wide open. So it's going to be interesting to monitor like how he looks at left tackle compared to right tackle. I think he still looks a little like thin, I feel like, for his reported weight. But again, he's an early enrollee freshman. It'll be interesting to see how much good weight he can add before fall camp.
Yeah, no, definitely. I'm very interested to see what happens along that, side of things. You're right. The backups, the depth, we've got it there. We're young. I mean, and I wouldn't be surprised. Hey, my dark horse might be Chauncey Gooden to take over a spot by the time the season starts, because he's got the size. He's got the size. Let's see what he can do once given that role. And so that's going to be really, really important. And then, Mike, I love this comment, and I think this is what everybody's looking for. I mean, let's be honest. This is what we're all going to be talking about all spring long. And right now I'm feeling pretty darn good about it, because I agree. We are going to have a 1-2 punch at quarterback that we're not going to worry if the starting quarterback gets injured next year, guys. This isn't a case of last year where it was like, if Shedeur goes down, we're done. It's over. The season's done. It's not happening. Sorry. Staub is not going to lead us to the promised land. He might get a win or two. He's not going to lead us to the promised land. Whether it's Kaidon Salter, whether it's Julian Lewis, that's going to be the talk all spring. And, we're just getting started with that. So, no need to worry, fans, when it comes to the quarterback room. And again, Juju and Kaidon are not leaving the program. No matter what happens. It's not going to happen this year, guys. So don't worry about that. But overall, much better when it comes to that. And, when it comes to the press conferences, Gunnar White definitely impressed there. David, did you have any chance to catch or hear any of the defensive coaches today speak?
Yeah, it was great hearing Domata Peko talk. He had a fantastic few years here with the Broncos, and he really wanted to get back to Colorado. So absolutely love that. Again, he saw himself as a player coach for kind of the last handful of years of his career. And so I think him and Warren Sapp are going to work in tandem really, really well. And I'm just I don't really have any huge takeaways other than the fact that, like, I think the new coaches that we've brought in, like, they all, and this is what happens when you have continuity, when you have the chance to have multiple years, to establish a culture, right? Is that as time goes on, man, you really do find the guys that fit your energy, the culture, what you need, just better. When you're turning over everybody at once, that can be hard to do, players and staff. And again, Gunnar White, George Helow's in a new role this year, Domata Peko, Marshall Faulk, like all these guys spoke today with like true excitement and passion from the heart. It didn't come off as like something that they just felt like they had to do, is just go through the motions in this press conference. And I think that's something that Coach Prime values, is that these guys definitely see this more than just a normal job. You can tell they're like truly invested in these kids off the field as well.
Yeah, that's definitely the type that Coach Prime goes for. I mean, like, these guys are motivators. Like, they're all having that motivator gene. And I mean, I listened to George Helow talk and I want to run through a wall. I listened to Domata Peko and how excited he is for this opportunity and just to be able to work with kids and to be able to take his experiences and pass those on. Like you can tell it excites him. And somebody way back when posted a comment about, players becoming coaches, because we talked about that at the very beginning with Marshall Faulk. And they said, rich people don't want to coach. Like they don't want to put in the effort to coach. And I would combat that a little bit with, if they don't want to coach because they're rich, they're just not going to coach. If they take a coaching job, it's not for the money. Like they're not going to make a ton of money being a coach at a college program. They're doing it because they love it. Like I coach high school sports because I love it. I make like 5 cents an hour coaching high school sports. And I laugh when a parent tells me, oh, well, you get paid too much. I'm like, are you kidding me? Because I get a small stipend once a year. Like that's getting paid too much. Do you know how much time I put in the off season and all of that to plan and do all that stuff? You don't get into coaching for the money. Like, yeah, if you become a head coach, sure, it becomes something bigger than that. But the amount of coaches out there in the world that get paid like an athlete does is not even close. And so these players do it because they love the game, because they love seeing these kids succeed. And so that's where it's at. Like that is what's going on with that. And so the type of coach that Coach Prime has brought in is definitely easy to see in just how excited and motivated they are to, pour into these kids and see them succeed and become better than they were when they arrived at the program.
Yes, you said it wonderfully, man. It reminds me again of what Marshall Faulk spoke about, of how he's at the point in his life right now. Again, kids are out of the house. At least that's how he made it seem. He's that's why he wasn't coaching, is because he wanted to be around all his his kids all the time. And now he wants them to come visit him in Boulder, now that they're older. And so, it just goes to show, like, man, Prime does everything intentionally, man. He truly does. And Marshall Faulk is a great example of keeping a guy involved. You've seen that with like T.O. or Chad Johnson, like keeping these guys involved. Marshall or Warren Sapp was the same way, inviting them to practice, do this, do that, whatever. But then when maybe they're in a life stage where they're ready to devote, a real portion of their life to these kids, the opportunity is there. And so a lot of people talk about how great of a recruiter Coach Prime is with the kids, but man, I think that you can look, especially with Marshall Faulk or Warren Sapp being like, man, like this is a recruiting process that he did over years, and it didn't require one in-home visit. So
I think that is an absolutely great point that I haven't really thought about. That a lot of people complain that Coach Prime isn't out on the the trails recruiting these high schoolers. You know what he's doing? He's recruiting the staff that are going to get the high schoolers for him. And then you know what Coach Prime's role in all this is? He's the closer. He's going to spend an hour with a kid on FaceTime that the kid's going to then tweet out and freak out. And all of a sudden now we're one of the top recruiters for them. I mean, we've seen that twice in the last month, where one of the top recruits in the class is tweeting out that, hey, I'm just excited that I got to talk for an hour with Coach Prime on FaceTime, when these other coaches are dropping by my high school. We're talking for 10 minutes. They're giving me an offer and walking out. That time is much more precious when you realize that Coach Prime's time is very valuable, in a good way. And so, getting that coaching staff is, I think, a little bit more important to him. And I would not be surprised if at some point T.O. does not join the staff once he's ready, once he realizes and gets the itch of like, I'm loving this more and more and more and more. Coach Prime asks him eventually, after he's, groomed him to be in that position. We
gotta find another word, man.
I know.
We can't be
cultivate,
talking about
cultivate like the love to coach, but we'll see it with more than just him. Like we will start to see it with more than just him. And so
Devin Hester, baby.
That'd be another great one eventually to get here, receivers and special teams coach, just to be, coaching up the punt return and kick returners. Man, would you not want to come to Colorado for that? But there's a lot of that's still to come. And, we may see some more interesting ads, but Yeah, the press conferences this week definitely have been so impressive with this staff. I've said it 100 times already. We have the best staff in college football. I really do feel like that. I mean, the experience is out of this world chart wise as far as playing. Yeah, do other college staffs have long-term coaches who have been coaching for decades and have this long history of coaching? Yes. But do those coaches have Hall of Fame jackets that show that they know what it takes to get to the Hall of Fame? The answer is no. There's not many staffs out there that have that. They're starting to, because they're starting to see what Coach Prime did, and they're exactly repeating it with Vic and Deshaun Jackson and Eddie George and all these guys that are kind of following in Prime's footsteps. But that's probably the biggest thing we can take away from this week. Outside of the actual playing on the field, but that's just kind of what we're going to get here the next couple of weeks. And hey, it's so nice to have this back and to get to actually like see it start to kind of come together.
Yeah. And yeah, I'm just excited for another iteration of Coach Prime Colorado Buffaloes football. It's going to be it's going to be so different. And again, I'm not saying that this is bad, like, because I wanted Shador and Travis to win those awards, right? Like, yep. Travis winning the Heisman was incredible. That was a very, very important part of how we played last year, because, look, it's like we weren't going to win the national championship. Like, we just weren't. That's what we were aiming for, but, we just weren't. But it's going to be cool, man, to see that there's none of that this year. We have, especially on offense, we have a young team outside of Kaidon Salter, who's a veteran quarterback coming in here. But we have a young team. We have a defense that I think is ready to be even better than what we saw last year. And, there's not going to be any of those maybe other things that you also want to value, like having some guys that are right up there to win the award. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm going to be pushing Kaidon Salter for Heisman, baby, until we're not. Like, I'm going to be pushing it. But I think this is going to it's just going to be cool, man, to see having, I think, just one unified focus. I think it's very true. We were trying to win games in a particular way. We wanted to play a particular brand of football because it highlighted our best players. And winning awards, I think, validates a lot what's gone on here. Travis Hunter winning the Heisman definitely validated, the culture and what's going on here. The fact that you turned down FSU to follow Coach Prime, I think, is in other schools and then in the transfer portal. So I'm just excited to, see a little different version. And I think that's going to be fun.
Yeah. I mean, you're completely right. Like, if we really look at it, were we going to win the national championship? Like, no, the stars needed to perfectly align for that to even come close to happening. However, by having a Heisman winner, by having 2 potential first rounders, plus many more draft picks that we're going to see, that does a ton for a program, because it says that I can go to Colorado and win the Heisman. I can go to Colorado and be a first round pick. There's a reason why in NCAA video games, those are one of like the stats when it comes to like recruiting players is, is there a pro lineage that I can follow through with? Or am I going to have to be doing an uphill battle of going to Boise State and having to play the greatest like career ever in order to be talked about as a first rounder, versus at Colorado? I'm in the spotlight. Everybody's talking about that here. There's been national championship at Colorado. There's now been 2 Heismans, including the most recent. We're going to have first rounders for the first time in a number of years. So it's the proof that it works. So now these kids can say, okay, hey, the thing that Coach Prime is saying, it's not just magic beans. Like, what he says happens. So if I want to go and I succeed at Colorado, I'm not going to have to deal with the thought of maybe not being successful or not getting the recognition I need. That's there. It's going to be there for these guys. It's going to help build this program up and continue to grow. And I just hope that, Coach Prime sticks it out long enough that we can see that process and see that build up. I want to see all these coaches stick it out as much as they can. I want to see these players stick it out. I want to see more players come in to compete and make this team better. All of that is part of how we grow the program. Okay. So
Yeah.
it's absolutely wonderful to see. And this is just the beginning. Like I see this is turning the page in the next chapter of Colorado football under Coach Prime. And this is going to be an exciting chapter because we now have the blueprints of where this story needs to go.
Yes. Yes. The foundation's been laid, man. I want to ask you this, Russ, kind of open-ended, but are there like a couple players on the roster,
Yeah.
maybe 2 or 3 that you're watching with, extra attention to detail, and why? Let's talk about them.
Yeah. I talked about this on my show earlier this week. Quinnell Farrakhan, I think already is kind of showing a little bit. And so because of what he's showing, because of that attention that he's getting, I have a feeling that he could kind of be that Draylon Miller role going into next year, what he had his first year. So I could see Quinnell Farrakhan out of all the freshmen wide receiver. I think he's the most ready now. Mind you, Quentin Gibson's probably has the highest ceiling, but we'll need some time to kind of figure things out. So Quinnell Farrakhan, definitely my big kind of a player to watch. And then outside of that, because, we could always go with the easy ones, quarterback or, anything like that. But I think that's the big one. And then I'm going to be interested to see what Colton Hood does, because I think he's going to have a breakout season on the back end. I think he's going to be one of our best defensive players. I think he could be very well in talks to be one of the best corners in the country and be up for, that award come the end of the season. So on the defensive side, for me, Colton Hood's definitely somebody I'm watching. And, Quinnell Farrakhan, I think, is going to be the kid that I'm going to really watch and see how he develops, not just this year, but, for the many years that he'll be here at Colorado.
Great.
What about you?
Yeah, there are a couple guys that got my eye on. First, I've already talked about this week. Isaiah Harge, man. I thought that he popped nicely with what we saw in the practice footage. And I believe that, Robert Livingston named him by name, in the defensive backfield, which I thought was really, really interesting. Because then, man, when we watch the, reach the people are well off, we see him on offense, man. So that's going to be something to pay attention to, what his role is. I think, again, with some of these guys that are just they were just kind of mid rated 3-star kind of guys. Most of those recruits, like, normally you'll take a year or two. And then in that third year as a redshirt sophomore is when you're ready to truly contribute on a team. Like, that's how it is for a lot of these college players. Isaiah Harge is going into his third year. Like, this is I think the time where we can really see him take a nice jump and find himself a really fun role in the offense. We talk all the time, man, in Broncos country about Sean Payton loving all the versatility of weapons, finding that joker, so to speak. Isaiah Harge, he brings something different to the backfield when you put him in there. I'd be interested to see him run more routes. And we have some question marks with kind of who our cornerbacks are after our projected starters. So he's a guy I have my eye on for those reasons. And then another guy on the offense that I think might be like, this is way too early, but kind of a sneaky pick to lead us in receiving yards this year. I think could be Draylon Miller, man. Like, if he takes a step in developing his route running, and I think we could start using him in a lot like higher variety of ways than what we saw, mainly in screens and some different things out of the backfield, but then also using him as like a legitimate vertical threat downfield. Again, one-on-ones can be tougher sometimes for those cornerbacks or safeties going up against our guys especially, but I really loved some of the cuts that we saw with him in one-on-ones. And again, Omari Miller is fantastic. Joseph Williams, I think we're all pumped about him, but who's to say Draylon can't take another jump? I think he already defied expectations last year, and if he takes another jump like that this year, I think he very well could find himself, honestly, being the most productive guy.
I was going to say, as you were saying that, I'm like, he's going to say Draylon Miller. And one of the things I've noticed, and Dave, tell me if you've noticed this, but since the end of last season, there's a number of players that have like blown up size wise in a good way. And Draylon's one of those guys. Like he looks strong.
Looks thick.
You want to say that? I mean, it's kind of an insult in a way sometimes. But when you see him, it's like he's got broad shoulders, but you can tell it's all muscle. There's a couple of guys on the team. The other one that I keep bringing up, which I know a lot of people don't love, but he's gotten big too all of a sudden. So I'm wondering if his play style is going to change. But Dallin Hayden looks a lot bigger in the videos. Like same thing, super broad shoulders, chest area. You can tell they've been working on a specific thing. And so I think that Draylon is setting up very nicely to kind of be that main target.
Yeah.
Not necessarily, I think, getting bigger, you're going to lose a little bit of your quickness and speed, but I think he's going for more of that strong kind of, possession wide receiver that's just going to be a vacuum when it comes to throwing the ball his direction, taking big hits across the middle, getting back up.
Just still 19. He can still get faster.
I know, but that's just crazy that he's already like sprouted up so much from even last year. Because I just remember when he first came in, I thought like a lot of the freshmen, wide receivers. I'm sure Quinnell Farrakhan will kind of look the same once he goes through a year of being in this program and stuff. But I will give a big shout out to the strength and conditioning program, because what Andrew Swayze's already done in his like couple of months here, that is going to be an underrated hire for a long time. And I would agree with you. Draylon is set to, I think, take over this wide receiver room. I have a feeling he will be one of the starting 3 wide receivers.
Oh, yeah.
When the season comes by far. He's done everything right with this program. Did a great job last year with his, limited time. And then now 100%. I think you're making a great call there with who to watch for.
Yeah, if he can take a step in his route running, bring in some more vets, man. Hopefully, Cooper Kupp will just be down the road here soon, and he can he can come up to see you for a day, right? Before OTA starts, stuff like that. Help out the Buffs. That would be a lot of fun.
Hey, the connections between the Broncos and Buffs now just keep growing, because you heard what Marshall Faulk today said, that he is best friends with Sean Payton.
He was his running back coach. I had no idea.
Way back in the day. So that's just unbelievable. Those connections are just continuing to grow between the two. So that there's going to be some trading of having the Broncos come up like they did last year. I mean, they did, or 2 years ago, right? Yeah, it was Prime's first year, because Russell Wilson came up and did some stuff with the Buffs, and they had a little connection going there where they did a practice and kind of talked with one another and threw some balls and did some things. I wouldn't be surprised if we see some more of that going on, especially with those ties between the staff. So we're going to see a bunch of Buffs coaches at Broncos training camp this summer, and we probably will see a bunch of, different connections there. I don't know what the rules would be with that. I'm sure there's like some kind of rules.
You reminded me, Russ, wasn't there some sort of, I forget which way it was. Was it Broncos coaches at the Buffs thing, or did we have some Buffs coaches over at the...
I think we had both. Yeah, because I remember seeing like Coach Hart and, Coach Flea and those guys, they got to go to training camp for sure. Now with all of the NFL pedigree that we have and all those guys, knowing them, I mean, Domata Peko obviously connected to the Broncos. Marshall Faulk obviously connected to Sean Payton. Coach Prime obviously connected to Sean Payton and that staff. So we'll definitely see some back and forth there, and it's only going to benefit each program and each team with what they're looking to do. So absolutely. Dave, you wanna go through and find some questions for us here as we kind of finish up the night? If there's any good ones, I think I've seen a couple of a few questions that we can definitely dive into before we end off tonight's stream.
Yeah, it's not this one. Mine is the biggest dude on the team. I guess at some point somebody was going to ask about it. What do you think? Time frame will be here? Something about Coach Prime contract extension close to the spring game.
I don't know. It could happen any day at this point. Like if it was going to happen, it would have already happened. Whatever reason it's taking a little bit of time, whether it's the red tape, whether it's the, I've said it a number of times on my stream to people who are like calling it out of like, oh, Colorado's being cheap. They don't want to pay Coach Prime. it's not that simple. It's not as simple as just opening a checkbook and paying him. There is a lot of moving parts, especially when it comes to a state school like Colorado. And by the way, I said that in one of my streams and somebody was like, Colorado's not a state school. I'm like, you're dumb. You have no idea how any of this works.
We
okay.
Like Regents. Come on now.
Coach Prime is literally an employee of the state of Colorado. Okay. And by the way, the highest paid employee in the state of Colorado, including the governor. Like Coach Prime is the highest paid employee in the state of Colorado on their payroll. So to give him an even bigger raise, there is a lot of moving parts that have to happen when it comes to that. So it's not just as simple as that. And plus, I can guarantee you the Coach Prime is not just going to say, hey, give me an extension, pay me $15 million and I'm happy. No, he's going to want some guarantees. He's going to want some other things. He's going to want some expanded coaching staff money. Like, I will say the good news is, and this is where we can say, hey, Colorado is not trying to be stingy with their money. Otherwise, why did we sign Coach Livingston to the highest contract in the history of Colorado football for an assistant? We did that because we have the money. He was worth it. It was much easier when it came to that negotiation because there's not going to be a bunch of other promises we have to do for him. Coach Prime, there's a lot of other moving parts to that contract than there is an assistant coach. So that's going to take some time. We're going to have to see what happens. I mean, would I love it? Hey, you know what would be the best thing ever, Dave? You want to know how to really optimize all this? At the spring game, have him sign the contract. You know, national TV, have Coach Prime on ESPN sign the contract. Do you not think that ESPN would not come to Boulder in the spring practice if they got to kind of break that news live?
They're not going to Nebraska. They're not going to Nebraska for their spring game, right?
Nope.
Sorry, Mike.
Nope.
Sorry about that.
Hey, Matt, when everybody's, not caring about Nebraska and everybody's tuning into Colorado, and you really think that it's going to be somehow a way to poach our kids away from us, it's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. But absolutely, we will pay him, guys. Don't worry about it. I think everybody knows that they have to pay him or they lose him.
Yeah, I'll be honest. I'm like hella annoyed this extension isn't done yet. I'm like incredibly annoyed. Like I thought it would be done by now. And I think like anybody who knows somebody like has communicated that, but I'm not one to panic. I'm just not. Like we're going into this season. It's going to be awesome. I think it will get done at some point, but as annoying as it is for me, like you pointed out, there's things pointing in a positive direction for this. And the biggest thing is being Coach Livingston's extension, as well as adding more true assistants to the coaching staff. So those are very positive things going in that direction. Man, there was something else I was gonna say about it, but yeah, ultimately I'm just like hella annoyed. I think it will get done, but honestly, I'm just not one to panic about it. Like, oh yeah, this is what I was gonna say. Coach Prime, he takes forever on some things. He goes to the beat of his own drum. Again, this thing is just different than how it is for all these other college programs. I'm just not one to really care too much, but I am hella annoyed. I am annoyed about this.
Panic if the season comes and we don't have a contract. You know why? Because what's going to be the question that Coach Prime is going to get asked every single week in his press conferences after games?
I know.
When are you signing an extension? When are you signing an extension? And you want to talk about it hurting recruiting? It will at that point. Okay. Yeah. We're kind of past that point where it's hurting recruiting, but if it goes into the season, we don't have an extension and he keeps, the little comments about paying me my money and things like that. And then, doesn't have anything signed. Yes. Then we can all panic. Then we can all get upset and frustrated because it will eat into the program's success. It will by then. My guess is I hope, they should be smart enough to know like this can't go past spring. If we don't have something, once we get into summer, it's going to become a distraction at that point.
It's going to be such a pain. It's going to be like all the Cormani McLean stuff all over again, man.
Or the Coach Prime is going to Dallas, stuff that we've dealt with for the last 2 years. And, every time we're like, Coach Prime is not leaving.
Gone after this year again. So, yeah. Sounds like it, man. Or whatever team Shador's drafted by, right? That's going to be the next one. Is could he go there and coach, right? So Russ, I got to start wrapping things up, man, but really appreciate you joining me, man, for Buffs Blitz, man. Maybe I don't know if you got availability, man, maybe we could keep this up throughout spring ball, man. Just have I like having these long form conversations, man. But let us know what you got coming up. What can we be on the lookout for over at Buffs News Weekly?
Yeah, just the normal stuff. Everybody knows that I'm right now in the process of moving back to Colorado. So, may go through some periods where I'm not able to do a ton of streaming. Like last week, went a whole week without, a show. But that was because we were getting our house ready and doing all that stuff. So we'll be moved by June. So, hey, all month of July, we're going to be going hard, going into that first season. And, I'm trying to work some networking to get some connections to the Buffs, now that I'll be in the backyard and be one of the few content creators located on the ground, Yeah. So we'll see what we can get out of that. And, I'll be the first to bring you some news and stuff if I'm there. But other than that, guys, 4,500 subscribers we hit today. So would love to get to that 5,000 mark this spring. We'll see what happens, but that's pretty much all we got going on. So, make sure you guys are following along over there. So, when I go live as well, we've got so much Buffs content just available to us at our fingertips, whether it's DNVR, the pregame show, all of the different channels you have. I mean, honestly, we could have a 24/7 Buffs network, and I'm sure people would be watching 24/7.
Oh yeah.
That first person to fully pull that all together with everybody is probably going to be able to create a pretty nice media empire, at least for the time that Coach Prime is at Colorado, because the amount of stuff that we could put out there is just it's so entertaining and fun.
Buffs After Dark. That sounds like a lot of
Could
fun.
you imagine having a Buffs After Dark with some different people? I don't know. He might go a little too hard on that.
Yeah, we might get shadow banned. So.
There you go. No, but appreciate you having me on, Dave, as always. And yeah, we'll definitely keep doing this throughout the spring. It's always fun.
I want to give a shout out to the chat. So great seeing some new faces as well as many familiar ones in the chat. Thank you guys for your support as always. Again, it would mean a lot to me if you go over to Russ's channel, smash that subscribe, and leave some comments with your thoughts on the replay if you're catching us then. I'll be back hopefully with some stuff tomorrow, if not Saturday. And as always, y'all, go Buffs.
Let's go Buffs.